This is episode number 159. When it comes to reaching people on social media, small is the new big. 50,000 followers with no advertising, that's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. How to take your idea and make a name for yourself within your industry and beyond. Spread your message. Attract a following. Rise above the noise. Here's your host, David Hooper.
Welcome to the Red Podcast, the podcast for influencers. If you're a blogger, podcaster, speaker, marketer, nonfiction author, or entrepreneur, this is the podcast for you. Focus is how to take your idea, make a name for yourself, and make money. In the Red Room with me, I've got David Drobny. NashvilleSevereWeather.com is his website. He may be best known for his Twitter account. NashSevereWX is the username, 50,000 followers. And now, television, radio, old school media, they call him. We're going to talk about how he did it and more. Welcome to the Red Room, David.
Well, hey, this is quite an experience in here.
You just told me something before I hit record, and I think this is a funny way to start. Your last car was struck by lightning, which normally maybe isn't that funny, but you're a weather guy. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that's a fair assessment, I would say.
That's like a safe dropping on a bank teller's car.
It is a little bit. You know, I really don't have any explanation for other than, I guess this was kind of before I got into the hobby that I'm really into now. And just driving back from work on 840, and the lightning hit right next to the car. Fried all the circuitry in it while I was driving. It's amazing what will happen when your car gets hit by lightning, and you honestly, you don't really realize what's happening until it's over. And people say, "Were you frightened?" Oh, no, it was like God took one of those paper bags and blew it up with air and then popped it right over the top of your head. It was awesome.
Well, I'm glad you say it.
Yeah, it was.
Glad you're safe.
You're in a safe place in a car.
Well, right. Yeah, you're just on a bunch of rubber balloons, I guess, right?
Well, you are, but it's the cage of the vehicle that actually protects you from it. It disperses the energy of the lightning.
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into weather before we talk about the business behind weather. How did you get started in weather?
Well, quite by accident. Most weather nerds like me will tell you the story of the event when they were a child that got them interested in it, and I'm no exception to that. Just running from tornado warnings, and probably my earliest memory is we were living in Mason, Ohio, and the tornado warning that would occur, and everybody would go across the street to the only basement in the entire neighborhood. Of course, it was completely outfitted with 2 kegs, 2 pool tables, a room for usually where our mothers congregated to watch television. It was quite the party, and also quite terrifying when somebody would hear something and they'd tell everybody to shut up, get underneath the pool tables, and we'd listen for the tornado. Of course, it never came.
But now, not only just because of technology, but thanks to people like you, we have weather information available all the time. Let's explain what Nashville Severe Weather is and why you're here.
Well, I think I'm here because I started a Twitter feed called @NashSevereWX, which was born out of my frustration with my friends calling me and texting me and asking for weather information for Nashville and south of Nashville. And I got sick of answering all of their texts and phone calls. So I said, you know what, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put this on Twitter. And if you want it, just pull it right off of there. And what started in late 2010 and early 2011 as a pretty modest following grew from, I think we hit 100 in February, 100 followers on Twitter in February 2011. And as I'm standing here, we're almost to 50,000.
Just word of mouth. You're not doing any kind of advertising.
I printed stickers of our avatar one time and passed them out. But other than that, yeah, it's completely word of mouth.
So why do you think that is?
I think people have an intense need to know what's happening weather-wise locally. And they're not always getting that information from the app that they've got. They're also not necessarily getting it from TV because TV's got to handle all of Middle Tennessee, and they're not specifically focused on just where they are. And that feeds into the axiom that everybody talks about with weather, which is all weather is local. If storm's happening to you, you want to know what's happening to you. You don't necessarily want to wait for the TV meteorologist to get back to your storm after talking about the one in Clarksville or somewhere else.
Right. Well, you think about when you watch the Weather Channel on television, when is that? Well, it's a tornado's coming, a flood's coming, something drastic is happening.
Right. There, I hate it when I say it this way because the local TV meteorologists we have in Nashville are pretty unique in that they all work well together. They're very professional. They do what they do very well, but the scope that they have to cover is well beyond what we do. Will and I handle Davidson County, which is where he lives and I work, and Williamson County, which is where I live. And
so let's explain that for somebody who's not in Nashville. Davidson County is Metro Nashville. Nashville is the entire county.
That's right.
Williamson County is where the rich people like you live.
You have to have, I think, a helicopter, an acre of land, and a butler, I think, to live in Williamson County.
And a farm.
And a farm,
horses.
That's right. Apparently Justin Timberlake just bought some land down there.
Justin Timberlake, this happened just a couple days ago. I think it was 150 acres, millions of dollars that he spent for that.
That's right out in Williamson County. I have a friend who bought
neighbors.
Yeah, I have a friend who bought a modest amount of land out there and moved, and his neighbor is the star of a network TV show, a Major League Baseball player, and another friend of his.
Yeah, it's a hot place for celebrities. They're coming from Los Angeles, and it seems like a bargain compared to Los Angeles or New York. So a lot of entertainers there, a lot of very affluent people there.
That's right. So anyway, that's what we do. We cover just metropolitan Nashville and Williamson County. You should, if you're going to cover weather, you need to know the area that you're covering.
I think this is great for anybody who's in any kind of marketing, though. It's what I call local. It's niching down. Don't try to please everybody. Just try to really please a select group of people. But 50,000 followers, more than I've got, more than most people have on Twitter.
Yeah, we're honestly, I remember when we started this, I thought, gosh, if we ever got to 1,500 people, we'd really be doing something. And it has just exploded really beyond my expectation or really kind of my wildest dreams. It's been a lot of fun. I tell you what, I have fun with it.
So before Twitter, you kind of had a reputation among your friends. You were like the weather guy. Like I've got a guy who reads Consumer Reports, and if I need to buy a car or buy anything, I go to him. If I need to know the weather, I'm going to come to you. And it's really just an offset of that.
That's right. It's my hobby. Some guys are poker guys, and they can sit and teach you poker strategy for hours and hours and hours. And you have a question, that's who you call. Well, I was the storm guy. If there was a tornado warning or an approaching storm, I got a phone call or a text message because I was running software that, you really have to be a weather nerd to want and to actually use.
Well, I want to talk about that because I got a text from you earlier. This interview we're recording right now almost didn't happen. And the way I understood it from your text, it's because you were keeping an eye on a storm.
Yeah, we had a severe thunderstorm today in northern Davidson County. And whenever there's a storm, either Will or I or one of our interns covers it. And probably the best way to describe it is we live tweet it. So here's a photo of a cloud formation or whatever, or a storm that somebody sent us or that we've taken. Here's a picture of the radar image and some writing on it to tell you where the storms are coming. And what we do is when the storms come in, we give you a blow-by-blow description of what's happening, what we see, what we expect, when we expect it, and pretty much give you everything that we hope that you would get from your local TV meteorologist, and hopefully giving you information that you want and need to know.
Well, it's done in an entertaining way. That's one of the reasons that I like it, and I think that it's worked out so well among people of Nashville. These are just tweets that I saw today. You said, storm mad, but not breaking any laws, and had a photo of the storm.
Yeah.
If you want to take a long lunch downtown, leave for your restaurant at 12:15, then unfollow us and tell your boss I was caught unaware.
Yeah. Well,
then Obama was here today. You were going back and forth with Obama on his POTUS account.
That's
apologizing for the poor weather that we had today.
Well, he was landed at 12:30, and of course the worst of the storm, the severe thunderstorm, arrived at 12:35, and I felt kind of bad about that. It's funny when you kind of have this Twitter account, you feel like people are going to blame you for when the weather's bad, and that's mostly tongue in cheek, and then also praise you when it's good. So we need to, as a city, take some ownership for the poor hospitality we showed the president today.
Well, I did see one a couple of days ago. There was a baseball game, Nashville Sounds, our AAA team here in Nashville, and somebody, it was tongue-in-cheek. They were kind of blaming you because the game, I guess, was rained out. They said that was the first time you were wrong this year, though. Yeah,
well, we're wrong all the time. It's just people don't usually call us out on it. You know, weather is an inexact science, and we deal in probabilities, and we struggle. And I say we, the weather industry as a whole, struggles on how to express the degree of certainty that we can have with what's coming with the weather. And that's constantly what I'm trying to do. I feel like at times I'm trying to translate what is very technical weather information and express it in a way that somebody who isn't a weather nerd can understand.
Well, that's another huge takeaway, I think, is taking something that maybe boring and technical, but breaking it down into a simple and entertaining way. Let me give another tweet that I just saw. It says, hail is possible, but only really small hail. Damaging winds is the real worry. I garage my Maserati, not my Honda. So that's telling you, hey, you got something to worry about, but this is the degree. It's what you just said.
Sure. Yeah, it's, you know, if you've got a really expensive car and you don't want to take any chances, go ahead and put it in the garage. But if you're driving a Honda or, you know, I'm driving a Nissan Altima, yeah, if it gets a little bit of hail, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's been struck by lightning.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's
you can get through that. Well, let's talk about the lexicon that you guys have, because there are all sorts of community-building words, let's call them. You guys have your own language, really, with the people that like NashvilleSevereWeather.com.
We do. We kind of, through the course of doing this, have coined some phrases that are unique to the experience of living here. We had a snow dome in effect since 2011. It died February 9th. And it wasn't my idea, but there were 4 years where it did not snow more than an inch over a calendar day in Nashville. And that was an anomalous thing. We usually will get at least an inch of snow every year. After the second year, people were starting to wonder, is there physically a dome over the city preventing it from snowing? And it was almost comical at times. We'd have pretty good snow bands that would approach the city and then completely fall apart before they got here. And it was much to the frustration of teachers and students mostly that they weren't getting snow days. So we coined and went with the snow dome term, and there was a lot of debate. I think probably the most retweeted thing we've ever done was the death of the snow dome. And it got to the point where the TV meteorologists were using it. The Weather Service was using it. I got phone calls from the Tennessean, which is the big paper here in town.
Yeah.
Everybody was interviewing me at the snow as if we had invented the term, and I think we didn't invent it, we popularized it.
Well, I love it that one guy with a phone and a Twitter account can have television, big newspapers, other media outlets calling him.
Yeah, I'm often blown away by that. You know, I always tell people, you know, we are not credentialed, licensed meteorologists. We are hobbyists. To that extent, we have a relationship with the National Weather Service that depends on us not originating or inventing any type of watch warning or other information. Everything you hear from us is derived from somewhere else, whether from a radar, whether from the Weather Service. There's lots of different products that are out there that we use. We are not original in anything. We are derivative.
I think of what you guys do kind of like Southwest Airlines. They're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, but they do it in a fun and entertaining way, and you guys certainly do that. You don't see this when you turn on local NBC affiliate. For example, you mentioned the Snow Dome. We had a big ice storm, and did you guys come up with Dwight D. Eisenhower?
Well, there was that. Dwight D. Eisenhower, there was Snowbama, because actually the worst of it came on President's Day, so it became Snowbama. There was Teddy Snoozevelt. People here are so intensely creative and original, and they're always giving us ideas that we run with. But that was kind of known as the Snowbama event, I think, was the one that was most popular.
Well, what I love about this is it's building community. It's something that anybody can do, but everybody's worried about going international. They want to be big. You know, I've got a background in the music industry, and people want to be famous worldwide. But what a lot of people don't understand is if you're playing to 5,000, 10,000 people, it doesn't really matter where they are. They could be in Moscow, Russia, Tokyo, Japan, or your local backyard. It's still 5,000 people. It's still that exciting. You guys have done that. The Twitter account, it's Nashville Severe WX.
Yeah, WX is the abbreviation for weather. You got 14 characters in Twitter account, so we shrunk it to @NashSevereWX is where you can find us.
So I'm curious to know, how you balance watching radar, tweeting a lot with your work, because you are an attorney, and I don't even know what kind of attorney you are.
Yeah, I do litigation. I do workers' comp defense work.
Okay, so that's pretty intense.
It is.
You've got court dates. How does that all work? How do you balance this? You got a family too.
I do. I have 2 kids and a wife at home, and it has to be balanced in a sensible way. Obviously, you have to have a patient family. You know, work comes first on the schedule. Usually when there's a big weather event that's going to take my time, we'll know 2 or 3 days in advance, and I can make arrangements to accommodate it. So, you know, I have been in the office at 4 a.m. to get work done because I know I'm going to have a storm in the afternoon. I have covered storms through the night. I can't not do it. That's what I tell people. I can't not do it. But more than anything, I have help. When we got to about 1,000 people, I realized that this was bigger than I could do alone. I talked to a lot of people, had a lot of lunches, and met Will Minkoff, who was doing something similar to what I was doing. And he and I think, were of the same mind. After speaking with him for a couple of hours, he kind of came alongside me and is fully credentialed, has all the access to everything that I do. If I'm busy, or if my son has a baseball game and I can't hit the Twitter account, he'll do it. So we pass it off. When we started the website, we got interns to write most of that content, because that content's written during the day. We edit it as needed and then go about our day. And the interns are getting their own value out of that. They're getting real-life weather experience on social media and on a web space that they wouldn't otherwise receive.
And this is something that you would do regardless of the Twitter account, the notoriety, the website.
The best analogy is I'm just letting people look over my shoulder. Whenever there were storms, before I was doing any of this, I was 100% looking at the radar. So the amount of time that I devote to it, especially during severe events, hasn't changed. I'm just kind of channeling that in a way that people can kind of see what we're doing and benefit from it as they see fit.
I'm curious to know about monetization of this. Do you have plans to monetize it? Are you monetizing now? Have you been approached by people wanting a piece of this?
Yes, we've been approached. We've not been able to reach an agreement. I think part of that is because when you monetize something, you end up getting a boss. And the boss, for example, if we were going to monetize the website, which is hitting in the 7 figures every year in terms of hits and views and things, the people who would pay us to advertise there would have a say over what we want to say. And if I want to make a dumb joke about a Maserati, I don't want to get a phone call from somebody saying, well, you know, I'm Nissan and I sponsor you, and I don't want you making jokes about Maseratis.
Right.
And also, I think there's kind of a little bit of element of, I'm not in this for me. And I know that's probably the cheesiest thing that's ever been said on this podcast, but it's just one of those things that it's kind of our baby, and we just want to do what we want to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you say I'm not in this for me, the thing that comes to mind, again, coming from a music background, being a performer, it's not just about the performer. It's also about the audience who's receiving the message. And you're certainly looking out for them by not having sponsors, because you can say what needs to be said.
A lot of the messages that I get from people, especially after a tornadic storm, and knock on wood, we haven't had one in a long time here, I'll get notes from people that say, you know what, the power went out at my house, and the only information I had about the storm was through the Twitter account. And I really found that the information I needed was there because it was intensely local and only focused on me.
Well, you think about 2010, Nashville was hit with a major flood. And you were not around then at that time, right?
I mean, I was living here and following it on radar, but I was not fully committed to the Twitter model yet. It hadn't really occurred to me.
That, to me, I had a little crank up radio because the power was out citywide, and I was listening to local radio, and they were helping people get home, people who were stranded. And that's the power of what I call local. And that's what you're doing via Twitter. And it reaches 50,000 people, a lot more than a lot of radio stations around here are. You don't necessarily need the wind-up radio. You just have to have a mobile phone, which still worked during the flood somehow.
Whenever there's a major tornado outbreak somewhere, and probably the most recent one was the latest tornado to hit Moore, Oklahoma, I'm always going back and looking and seeing what the reports are about that event afterwards. You worry about cell towers going down and people not being able to get a signal When you lose power, you lose your Wi-Fi, so you're hoping that your AT&T or Verizon, whoever you've got, is supplying you data to your phone. As a general rule, yes, the last line of defense for communication is your charged cell phone. When we have a bad storm coming and we suspect the power is going to be lost, that's one of the things we tell people. First of all, put some shoes on. God forbid you have a storm that rips your roof off. You don't want to be walking around in debris without shoes on. And second of all, have a charged phone. You're going to want to call people. You're going to need information. And you can get that information on the phone, as long as it's internet able, those kind of things.
I'm going to finish this episode out kind of talking about what we started with. A lot of people are talking about the weather. There are a lot of ways to get weather information. You guys have been more successful with this local model than anybody that I've seen. What do you credit for your success?
I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that question. This isn't something that we set out to do. It just kind of happened. I think the fact that it's hyper-local is what gets people's attention. I think that there is a need or something that's impacting them specifically. I think that people are frustrated with the general applications on their phone. I think they're frustrated with the weather data that they're getting that looks like a bucket of spilled paint in their hand. And they need, and again, these people, the regular person out there who's reading this, they're educated. They're not stupid. But it's a foreign language to them. And it helps to have something translated in a way that makes sense to them. It helps that the person who's giving them the weather information knows that the Hot Chicken Festival is on Saturday. And there's probably going to be a lot of people there. Maybe they're one of them. And somebody knows to look out for the Hot Chicken Festival because there's a storm coming. And they can tweet to them. Somebody who has an understanding of what's happening in their community and is only really caring about what's happening in that community.
One of the things that I noticed during the flood 2010 in Nashville was that I thought it really brought the community together. I thought that it really showed us each other's humanity. And I think there's something about the weather that does that. I think that we're all experiencing the same thing. Like a couple of days ago, the moon was red, and it had to do with these, what I heard, forest fires in Canada. And it made moon and the sun red, which was kind of interesting. It's not something like, it looked like a sepia filter if you looked at it. It looked just like the moons you've seen on Instagram, but for real. And it's cool to be able to share that. And I think that's maybe the big takeaway here is that when you can get your community sharing something and you can facilitate that, they're going to lift you up, just like they have this Twitter account. Nash Severe WX, the website, NashvilleSevereWeather.com. Dave, thanks for being here. This is so great. And I got to say, you're a great speaker. It must be all that litigation.
Well, I hope so. I hate hearing my own voice, so when I hear this back, I'm probably going to cringe.
Now, we got you going through the compressor. You know it's Nashville, so we're going to auto-tune it. We're going to fix it.
Yeah, can you deepen that up a little bit for me?
Dave, thanks for being here. We'll talk to you, I'm sure, soon. I'm going to have you back because we're going to be following Nash Severe WX on Twitter.
Appreciate the invite. Thanks.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.
Nashville Severe WX. Wait a minute. It's Nash Severe. Wait, what? What am I doing? Nash Severe WX?
Yeah, the Twitter handle's Nash Severe WX. We'll fix that.